Welcome to Pickleball Therapy, the podcast dedicated to your pickleball improvement. This is a special episode. I'm super happy to be joined by Kayla Teape from Pickled Minds. How you doing, Kayla?
Good. How's it going? Thanks for having me, Tony.
Going great, Kayla, and it's better now because we're chatting. We're chatting pickleball, which I know you love. I know I love, and so we're going to dive into that. And I think you're really going to want to enjoy. You really want to check out this episode and enjoy it because we're going to be talking about the mental side of pickleball, community. Like the spaces that we inhabit in this sport and things like that. And Kayla's been thinking about it, working at it, and so we're going to chat about that. So, Kayla, why don't we start off with a little bit of background about yourself, if you don't mind, in terms of like when you got into pickleball, a little bit about your journey, and then we'll play from there and share with everybody what you're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been playing pickleball for about 3.5 years now. I got into the sport alongside my dad. We decided to take an adult ed class in our town. And from there, we were just totally bitten by the bug. We joined a league, and then we were all of a sudden in tournaments, and we were traveling the country, and it just snowballed from there. So across those 3 years, not only have I been playing and kind of building my player side of things, but I've also been trying to find different ways to get involved because of how much pickleball has impacted my life. I wanted to be able to have a similar effect on other people. And with that, I've met so many incredible people. I think that's one of the best parts about pickleball is who you get to meet within the sport. And it really creates some sort of bond with people that you wouldn't otherwise really expect. I have friends in all different age categories, from all different backgrounds, different genders. It really doesn't matter. Pickleball can bring anyone together. So with that, I am forever grateful to it. And it helped me to really get out of a funk that I was in when I first found it. And I knew there was something special. I've played sports my entire life. I've played pretty much every sport you can imagine. I have two older brothers who've beaten me up on fields in the driveway. But something about pickleball was just, it didn't make sense. And I wanted to be able to share that with as many people as I could as possible. And so that's when I tried to hone in on the mental side of things, and really bring mental health into the picture as well, because I knew that had to be a pretty big component to what was happening. So then the inception of Pickled Minds, been around for about a year now, but really trying to build traction and find that momentum with it, and with Pickle Minds, hoping to just create spaces where we could bring people together. Doesn't matter your skill level, doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter if you've never played pickleball before or even ever heard of it. Just come, we're creating spaces, we are building communities, and we are just making sure that everyone feels safe within that environment, and give them a chance to kind of figure something out about themselves, find something they might love, and hopefully in the end just positively impact lives as we do it.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think, yeah, pickleball is so transformative for so many players, right? It means so much. It can have such a positive impact on your body health, your physical health, your mental health, everything, right? Your quality of life as you get older and things like that, all improve with this beautiful sport. So I love what you're doing. Let's dive a little more deeply into the mental side. What you're, kind of tell me a little bit about what you're thinking there, what's going on, what you're focusing on, maybe some revelations that you've had, anything you want to share on the mental side, because you probably know this already, but pickleball therapy, that's a lot of our focus is on the mental side of things. So why don't you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that might have been the toughest part about starting Pickled Minds, where I just had this idea, pretty big umbrella idea, but I didn't know exactly how we wanted to attack it or which avenues we wanted to go down. Because I was seeing two very different pools of people, where it was just the everyday folk who heard about pickleball, they wanted to try it, and then they're seeing this huge improvement in their life. And then I was seeing the other side of it, of my friends, a lot of the people I interact with, they're athletes and they found pickleball and they just wanted to be able to do it to the umpteenth degree, right? Road to 5-0, that's the goal. We're trying to just do what we can with this sport. And I was finding with that second group of people that the joy of playing pickleball, why they initially started it, was really faltering. And then we were forgetting why we even began. And then we were losing that spark, that happiness that we got from it initially. So for me with Pickled Minds, it was trying to figure out which avenue we were going to go down and which pools of people we were really going to try to address. And with that, I think I'm still open to going with both. Honestly, I don't think it needs to be one or the other, black or white thinking. But we began just starting with the masses, the pool of people, because I think that's really just the most important thing, making it accessible and letting people know that no matter what, you can do this, you could succeed at it. It's just the most important part is then just defining our goal with it. What are our intentions coming into it? And trying to be somewhat realistic with that as well. So I think that's probably the most important mental aspect I've come across. And I've even had to do it for myself first, and trying to just define which days are what days in terms of playing pickleball. What's the goal for me showing up to the court today? Is it simply to just hit around and have some fun with my family or some of my friends? Or is it to drill, and is it to actually get better and to really challenge myself? So, with that, I was able to still kind of keep the joy of the sport, even if I was having a heavier drilling day, challenging myself, maybe not succeeding in a way that it wasn't a successful session, but knowing that that was still the goal and knowing that I could still be happy with that. So just kind of redefining what it means every time that I show up to the court and helping people to do that as well.
Yeah, that's a really interesting uh, framing of it. I think I think I believe that we can achieve a balance, right, where you can be out there giving your all, right, trying as hard as you can to win every single um, rally, trying as hard as you can to drill as effectively as you can, and things like that, while at the same time uh, uh, having a joy in what you're doing, right, having happiness in what you're doing, not feeling bogged down by it. Because I would tell you, I think from my perspective, right, and obviously I'm an older player. I'm 56, right, so I've been around the block a little bit and I've seen stuff like that, right. But like when I look at like some of the top players in the sport, pro players, right, um, some of the best players don't seem to be having fun. They don't seem to be enjoying the moments. And you could argue, well, it's just their job and stuff like that's fine. I get that, but but God, wouldn't it be nice, right, to be able to like, perform, right, and do your best when you're out there, while still at the same time being able to enjoy the experience while you're at it. And I'm a believer that you can have both of those at the same time. And I agree with you that I don't think you need to preclude one group, right, the Road to 5-0 group, because of the other work. I think it's a function of like showing them the bridge, right? That there is a bridge where you can still enjoy the sport while you're still working on your improvement, while you're still trying to experience uh, the the success that you're looking for. Because the success itself is fleeting. The success itself is, um, um, to tie your happiness to that success. That's a really that's a tricky life to try and lead. Because if you're doing that, every other player in the tournament is doing that too, and most of you are going to be not happy. So anyway.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah, but I like I like what you're doing here, and on the pickle minds idea with the spaces. Let's talk a little bit maybe about that idea of the space, right? Because I think that's something that gets overlooked, the importance of the space itself.
Yeah.
And my experience has been, when I interact with players, I'm always trying to encourage them to at least give the sport a try. As you've experienced and I've experienced. Once you try the sport, if you try it in a way that's connects to you, right? You're in. You're in. The rest of it's details. But a challenge there is, when I interact with the folks, sending them somewhere that I know is and I'm using the term safe space here very broadly, right? But just a safe space, a space that I know I can send them to. I know they're going to be treated well when they get there. I know they're going to be like, there's somebody's going to be there who can guide them into the sport, as opposed to like sending them to like a court that you send them to that court, no one's going to talk to them, no one's going to say anything to them, they're not going to be welcome there, they're not going to be added to any games, and so then they're not going to come back, right? So let's talk a little bit about that idea and what your thoughts are, anything that you're doing, anything you've experienced in terms of um the accessibility of the space to the new player who might be coming into the sport.
Yeah. Absolutely. I guess yeah, I'll use for example an event I recently hosted a couple weekends ago where I met Kylene. And it was the She's Got Game Women's Summit. The whole goal of it was kind of just celebrating Women's History Month and allowing people that space to come show up and just have fun playing pickleball. And even within that space, we had one woman show up who had never played pickleball before at all, never even picked up a paddle, just saw the flyer, was like, thought it sounded fun. So of course, yeah, that was something we really wanted to celebrate. We really wanted to encourage her to, no matter what happens throughout the day, just keep trying, just keep trying. And with that, we didn't even really need to prompt many people who were also attending the event. But with that, you just saw this ripple effect of all the women, 30 plus women, who were all willing to just um, did I freeze there? Sorry. Who were all just willing to lift her up the entire day, knowing that it was her first day there. And I think that was really just a great example that naturally occurred at the event, which kind of fortified exactly the goal of making sure that the environment is safe, making sure that it's supportive, making sure that the energy is up. And of course, that's not always going to be the case, right? But it's just trying to at least be self aware to see what we're adding to the environment. Are we the thing? Are we the negative energy that might be dragging someone else's experience down? It's okay. It happens, but just kind of being aware of that sort of thing within ourselves to see how we're creating that energy and that environment in front of us.
Yeah, I think that's super powerful. And I think, if you're listening to this, players who listen to this podcast aren't casual players. Kayla, they're like, they're more invested in the sport. And so I try and, give them suggestions, right, on things that they can do that are more positively uh, help the sport. And by helping the sport, we're always helping ourselves. That's the reality as players. As players, the stronger the sport is, the more players who are in the sport who are positive and good and and productive, the better it is for us, the better it is for them. But I think a couple of things that you said, and I'm gonna lean into these. I think one is, it sounds to me like the space that in which that new player, right, was able to experience the sport, and hopefully now she's like, let's party, let's go. Was the leadership in that group was clear in the messaging, right? So if you're out there and listening to this podcast and you're like a leader in your course, right? You're one of the players who other players look up to. I think you have a greater responsibility, right? To be a voice for inclusion, a voice for acceptance of new players, or not even new players, just players, just folks who want to participate. And even if you're not like one of the leaders in your community, right? Adding that positive voice, because what you mentioned was that ripple too, where basically like, as long as like there's a consistent um, thought process, right? Consistent messaging, a consistent view, you're more likely to have inclusion, as opposed to like you start getting these things where like, well, this court is reserved for this, and this court is reserved for that, and this court is reserved for that, and now you have exclusions, right? You have barriers you're put up, and I don't have any problem with time for closed play ideas. That's okay, but there also needs to be a lot of time for anybody's welcome to play, and not feel like, am I good enough to be here? Am I good enough to be there? And causing doubt in terms of their interaction with the sport. So I really commend you guys. Do you guys have any plans? Is that like, is there plans to repeat that? Is there plans to maybe like help other communities do these kind of events and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. We're actually having a chat today about the second one at that same location, which was at Sport
Nice.
Time in Yorktown. And then, yeah, we're just hoping to kind of recreate it at facilities, first here in our area in the Northeast, but then also to wherever, is looking for that sort of event, for that sort of idea.
So if you,
Definitely.
if someone, and we're going to give it to them again at the end, but if someone is interested in connecting with you, they hear this podcast, they go, you know what? I want to do that in my community. I want to open it up to, so that players who already play maybe feel stronger, right? Because they know that there's a tribe, there's a group that supports what we're doing, supports them, and also maybe invite some additional players. What's the best way for a player out there to reach you?
Yeah. So best place to reach me is on Instagram. The account is at Pickled Minds with an underscore, or through email as well at unpickleyourmind at pickleminds.org.
All right. Unpickle your mind.
Unpickle your mind. Yeah.
All right, I like that. I like that. So get the pickle out of your mind. So that's
That's
good.
it.
I like it. And then so it's pickled underscore minds on Instagram.
Pickled minds and then the underscore at the end.
At the end, okay. So
Mhm.
I'm gonna put those in the show notes for folks out there. It's okay. What's next for you? What's going on? I know you're doing some work with the Brooklyn Pickleball Club, which is awesome. MLP, congrats on that.
Thank you.
What's next for Kayla and her engagement with pickleball?
Yeah, so we've got a couple tournaments coming up for Brooklyn Pickleball Team's minor league, which I now am luckily the director of. It's been a very just totally rewarding experience to be at the helm of that. And just now we have 145 plus players on our roster. And our next tournament's going to be at Hell's Kitchen in Manhattan. We've got a V4 MILP tournament coming up. So we're going to be sending 10 plus teams into that tournament, which will be exciting. And I'll actually get to play in that one as well as a member of the minor league myself. So that I'm very excited about.
Nice. Sounds like a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
then it sounds like so on Pickled Minds, you're moving forward with it. You're working on it. You're still fleshing out some of the concepts. I really like the way you're headed with, can I help? The obviously you're all in or imbued with like the 5-0 plus or road to 5-0, that kind of community, which is great. Know that there's a community out there, which there's a community out there that is also not necessarily 5-0, but they also could benefit from some of these concepts. So I really like what you're doing with both of those things. Obviously, anything that we can do to help promote what you're doing and do what you're doing, great. And if you're listening to this podcast and you're interested in what's going on, you want to follow Kayla and her journey in pickleball, make sure you follow her on Instagram, again, in the show notes, or send her an email if you want to try and get some guidance or some help on an event in your area. So any last words, Kayla?
No, but thank you so much for having me. This has been a real pleasure. And I'm loving the book. Kylene brought the books to the event and I've been just zooming through it. So thank you so
Awesome.
much.
I'm glad you're enjoying it. Um, uh, and again, anytime that we can help, please let us know. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure you share with friends, particularly if you know folks out there that are trying to do community building and stuff like that. Kayla is going to be a great resource for them. Kayla, thanks a lot for being a part of the podcast and good luck with Pickled Minds. And we're going to keep connection on this going forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much.